joined by the Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of International Relations and Cooperation, Madame Selma Ashipala Musavi. Good evening, ma'am, and welcome to Talk with the Nation.
Good evening, and thank you very much for having me.
Secondly, we are joined by the Director of International Relations at the Namibia University of Science and Technology, Dr. Marius Kudumo. Good evening, sir, and welcome to Talk with the Nation.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
And finally, we have the spokesperson for the Pan-African Institute for the Study of African Society, Mrs. Miriam Nyidipo. Good evening, ma'am, and welcome to Talk with the Nation.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
I'd like to start by asking you the first question. And specifically, we spoke right at the outset, we already mentioned that it's a clear departure from the OAU Charter, which prohibited any member state to intervene or to have people intervene in the internal politics of any member country. Why do you think we departed from that provision when we went into the AU specifically? And do you think it's working for us as Africans?
Well, thank you very much, Hilda. First of all, let me mention that international relations are dynamic. They are not static. The objectives and principles of any organization is informed by what is current. What informed the Organization of African Unity was decolonization. We wanted to get rid of colonialism and apartheid. So that was the focus. How do we mold unity? How do we bring about solidarity among the African people? How do we regain the dignity of the African person? So when you look at the AU Charter, yes, it mentioned non-interference in internal affairs because, as I said, that was not the focus.
Yes.
Now, coming to the Constitutive Act of the African Union, yes, we are still saying that there will be non-interference in internal affairs. But then the Act went further to say that in the event of war crimes, in the event of genocide or crimes against humanity, the African Union will intervene in that country. So the realities have changed. If you compare from 1960 and 2015. Yes. So what we are doing now is to have an organization that speaks to the reality of today. So it's not a departure, it's simply taking cognition of what is happening.
Now, when we talk specifically about the definition, there must then be an agreed definition for war crimes, for crimes against humanity, and for genocide. What would that look like? Can you describe that for us?
Well, genocide is not new. We had genocide in Rwanda. The definition is there. There are war crimes. International law have defined these crimes. But I think what is important is to accentuate the fact that it's not unilateralism. If there's genocide in country A, the African Union have to decide that yes, there's genocide, take a collective decision and go into that country.
We'll talk at length about this evening. I'd like to come to you, Dr. Kudumo. We spoke about the Constitutive Act and then this provision where it still talks about non-interference, but that there is a definition. Do you think that there is a clear understanding, that there is a united understanding, especially as we search for unity in regards all matters Africa?
Yeah, there might be a clear definition, but it is difficult to put it in practice. For example, you are talking about non-interference, but in the same act, it is qualified when to interfere. So obviously, there will be different interpretation. But I think the Constitutive Act of the African Union is trying to define when to interfere, although it is also making provision of non-interference. I think it's more clearly made now. But the difficulty that you will always find is there will always be conflict between national interest or national sovereignty against the collective interest. Obviously, in practice, there will be challenges, but I think the Act is trying to clarify that. But making it practical, there will be challenges, and I think it's work in progress.
I'd like to come to you, Madam, specifically when you speak on behalf of the Pan-African Society. Obviously, there is one segment of this conversation which is to understand what this constitutes when we talk specifically about the legislation that we just referred to. But there is also another provision that must then deal with the issues around promotion of peace and security and stability, because it's not just that we don't want to interfere, but we also want to be seen to be actively promoting good values for Africans, and especially good governance.
Yes, that's where...
How can civilians specifically like ourselves and the organization that you represent enable the AU to really, at the end of the day, do justice to these aims?
Okay, the Pan-African Institute for the Study of the African Society aims to do just that, to work with the civilians in order to understand the morale of Africa at large. We are a result-oriented institution, and we want to teach, to become a center of excellence for African matters in order to teach people from the grassroots, because it's not easy for somebody to adapt to the African concept from the get-go. So we aim to, like, let's say, doing levels, beginner, intermediate, and then the higher level.